The blizzard had hit harder than anyone in the remote Alaskan village had anticipated. Snow fell like thick sheets of cotton, burying homes, roads, and the forest in a quiet, blinding white. Most animals had long disappeared into hibernation or burrows, but something strange stirred beyond the treeline. Jonathan Myers, a reclusive wildlife photographer, had recently settled into a modest log cabin nestled near the edge of the boreal woods. Widowed and withdrawn, Jonathan had found solitude in the wilderness, seeking comfort among the silence of nature. But that peace was disrupted one frigid night when he heard scratching and howling at his back door. At first, he assumed it was just a stray dog, lost or desperate. But when he opened the door, he was face to face with a pair of wild wolves, their fur stiff with frost, eyes glistening not with aggression, but pleading. He froze. It made no sense. Wolves don't approach humans, let alone beg for entrance. Yet there they stood, not advancing, just waiting. Jonathan hesitated, instincts battling logic. But something in their eyes, a kind of desperate intelligence, made him open the door wider. Cautiously, the wolves stepped forward, stopping just inside the threshold, shivering but composed. One limped noticeably. Jonathan didn't move, afraid sudden action might spook them. But the wolves didn't growl or bare teeth. Instead, they looked back toward the forest as if urging him to follow. After a few tense moments, they turned and trotted out into the snow, stopping every few feet to make sure he was behind them. Grabbing his coat, flashlight, and emergency kit, Jonathan followed the ghostly shapes through the snowbound woods. The air was razor-sharp cold, the wind biting through his layers. After nearly an hour of trudging, they arrived at a small hollow beneath a fallen tree. There, hidden in the snow, was a gruesome sight. Another wolf, larger and clearly injured, lying half-buried with a bloodied leg. But that wasn't what made Jonathan fall to his knees. Curled beside the injured wolf were 4 tiny pups, barely old enough to open their eyes, shivering violently from the cold. The adult wolves who had brought him there nudged the pups with their noses, then turned to Jonathan with a look that pierced his soul. Without thinking, he dropped his bag, wrapping the pups in his coat and gently applying heat pads from his kit. He radioed for help on his emergency satellite phone, voice trembling. The next few hours blurred into chaos. Local wildlife rescuers, park rangers, and even a vet made their way to the site after being airlifted in. The mother wolf, because Jonathan now realized the injured one was the pup's mother, was tranquilized and taken for surgery, while the pups were treated for severe hypothermia. The wolves who had fetched Jonathan never left their side, even allowing medics to touch them, something unheard of in wild wolf behavior. Days turned into weeks, and Jonathan visited the clinic daily, watching the pups gain strength. He learned that the mother wolf had suffered a broken leg from a bear trap, illegal in those parts, and would recover fully. The story spread like wildfire, from local newspapers to national wildlife organizations. But what no one could explain was how 2 wild wolves knew to trust a human, how they knew exactly where to go, and who to approach. Jonathan, once broken and numb from the loss of his wife, now found purpose again. He opened his home as a temporary shelter for injured wildlife, working with conservationists to protect the wolves' territory. Months later, he watched from a distance as the now healthy mother and her pups were released back into the wild, the 2 guardian wolves at her side. They paused at the treeline, looked back once more, and vanished into the woods. And though Jonathan never saw them again, he would often find fresh paw prints outside his cabin after heavy snowfall, as if reminding him that some connections run deeper than understanding, that even in the wildest corners of the earth, compassion echoes in the most unexpected ways. Jonathan couldn't sleep that night. The frost still clung to his windows, and the image of those wolves standing silently at his door haunted him in a way he couldn't shake. Not with fear, but with awe. The cabin, once cold and silent, now felt warm with life. He thought about how close he had come to dismissing the cries in the dark. Had he not opened that door, those pups would have perished. He kept asking himself, how did they know he would help? Had they been watching him? Could they sense his grief, his empathy? He remembered the way they didn't growl, didn't attack, just waited. It was as if they chose him. That night, he wrote in his journal for the first time in years. "Tonight, I was saved by wolves," he wrote. Not the other way around. As spring thawed the forest, his cabin turned into more than a refuge for animals. It became a bridge between two worlds. Scientists began reaching out, intrigued by the wolves' behavior, and Jonathan worked with them to install trail cams. Discovering the pack had been quietly living nearby for years, watching him long before the blizzard. He'd find footage of the wolves circling his cabin, never aggressive, just curious. He was never truly alone. One morning, a small box arrived at his door. Inside, a plaque sent by a conservation group, in honor of the man the wolves chose. Jonathan wept. He had come to Alaska to hide from the world, to bury his pain in silence. But the forest had other plans. In the howling of wolves, in the eyes of a mother desperate to save her young, he found the very thing he had lost, hope. And though the snow would fall again, and winter would return, Jonathan knew he would never feel cold in the same way, because some doors, once opened, never really close again. And some stories, whispered on the wind between man and beast, live forever in the silence of snow. Let me know if you'd like a shorter version, narration tone adjustments, or background music suggestions.